this session by starting the recording. So welcome everybody. This is week 6 of the Meet Success webinar series, and tonight we are going to have a chat to Sandesh. So hi Sandesh, how are you going?
Hi Terry, hi everyone. Thanks Terry for giving me this opportunity to let everyone know my experience getting a job, the journey of getting a job in Australia.
No problem.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving up your precious time. So let's just go through a couple of housekeeping things first. What you have on your screen at the moment, you'll see the control panel. Just a couple of things about the control panel. It's quite large. It takes up a fair chunk of your monitor. So if you want to minimize it, simply click on the arrow, the white arrow in the orange rectangle, and it will turn into a toolbar like this one on your screen. And then if you want to post a question, simply click on the arrow and the control panel will expand. When you do want to post a question, at the bottom there is a question box that says type question here. Type your question in and click send. What will happen then is I will get your message or your question come up on my monitor and I can ask Sandesh that question. So we might kick off, get the ball rolling, and start with just a question. When did you come to Australia, Sandesh?
Yeah, I came around 2 years back. That is in April 2014. Yeah, I came on my partner visa. Basically, my wife was a citizen here, and then we got married in 2012, and I spent 1 year in India, and then thought of moving to Australia for better family prospects. And yeah, it's been 2 years I'm here in Australia.
Okay, great. And what's your job title?
Yeah, I am working as a test analyst now. Basically, it covers the whole aspect of testing. I'm more focused in web application testing and bits and pieces of automation testing as well. But generally, my job title is a test analyst.
Excellent. Yep. And so tell me what you do on a daily basis. It might not have to be the same thing every day, but what do you generally do at work?
Yeah. So it's more of just when I start my work, it's more of the initial part is team stand-up, daily stand-ups. Then it's generally we all get together, the team get together, and we all talk about what we will be doing. This basically we run in sprints kind of thing. It's an iteration kind of thing what we test. It runs in every 2 weeks. So basically we get together in the first part of the day. We talk about all the issues. We talk about the modules, what we'll be working on, what we'll be testing on, and we also make into account if there is any considerations we need to. We basically make sure we all are on the same page. The team is completely on the same page, and we'll be working on the assigned task. And moving forward, then there's some specific task allotted to me for testing. Then I go through all those tasks, like take it into account the requirement specification. The client has some requirement specifications, then break down those requirements into user stories and all those things, and then capture all those things accordingly, and start the testing activities, then interact with the project manager, the developers on how we are going to start it, and what all the modules we need to consider, the framework and everything. So it's basically interaction.
Yep. Okay. So just to pull that apart a bit, do you have any contact with the client? Are you involved in the requirement gathering stage, or are you further down the cycle?
The projects what I am working currently is like I work according to, with the business analyst, with the UX designers, and they are in direct contact with the clients. But if there is anything we need to make sure we are missing something in the requirements, and if it depends on the the criterias that are missing in the requirements, the client requirements. But generally, it's yes, the designers, the UX designers who get in touch with the clients, and the project managers, and they get all the missing specifications captured accordingly and notify me.
Yep. And how big's your team? How many people?
It's not a big team. I'm working in an agency kind of thing. It's around 20 of us. We are totally 20. The complete organization is 20 members, and the project which I am working is around 6 of us. I'm the only tester. There are around 3 developers, 1 front-end developer, 2 back-end developers, and 1 project manager. It's really exciting project, like taking the whole responsibility and starting from scratch and then working through all the entire process. It's really a good experience. I'm been gaining so far.
Okay. Look, a lot of other developers and testers have said to me that one of the most important aspects of the job is the relationship between the tester and the developer. Do you have any advice on how to have a good team working relationship with the developer from your perspective?
Yeah, I agree with that one, because there's often a saying that the testers need to keep the developers honest. But yeah, it's all the more better relation we have with the developer and the project managers, the more task we will be done within the sprint and within the time frame. So it's better to have a one-on-one communication. We generally have communication with the developers because developers are very busy with getting the modules developed within the sprint, because there is some time buffer kept for testing as well. So they make sure that a lot of their time is being utilized in development rather than interactions. But in the meantime, having said this, there is some critical things which some of the time I need to interrupt them and get it sorted out or get discussed about it. So we meet one-on-one. And sometimes we use instant messengers as well to get the things sorted out, and the daily stand-ups helps a lot to get all the things sorted out. But it's a good relation. It's always good to maintain a better relation with the developers. But when it comes for the testing part, it's always like you have to be arguing with why it is so and why it is not in this way. So yeah.
Okay. And how would you describe your employer? Small, medium, or large?
My employer is small now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what's the biggest challenge in your job?
Yeah. So far what I have experienced, the biggest challenge is to get the things done and make sure the issues have been notified to the team much before it's been handed over to the clients, and getting the designs and the requirement specifications before starting the project is also one of the biggest challenges in the job, because there's always something missing in the designs when we start developing, when the developers start their work with the website. There are a lot of modules missing, and there's some acceptance criteria which the client then introduces in the next sprints, which we don't make into account, or which somehow get skipped there. So getting all the client requirements captured is one of the biggest challenges, and getting that developed is also, I think, that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the most rewarding aspect? What do you enjoy the most?
So far from my journey, like I just want to speak about my experience. I'm coming from a mechanical background, and having worked in design, in mechanical design, CAD design, and then I shifted into a CAD software testing. Basically, it's a it's a mechanical design software. I have tested the design software products, but when I came to Australia, I found that the nature of work, what I was doing in India, I didn't find much opportunities in that relevant field. So I thought I could shift my profession completely into website testing, and started applying for work placements and
Okay.
jobs. Then, yeah.
So that's a career
So
change from mechanical engineer into IT, into testing specifically. That must have taken a bit of courage. How did you
yeah.
feel at the time? It must have been a little bit scary, yeah?
When I joined my job, I was really very scared, because I think all the software, all the developers and the project managers, I was totally new into that world, but just kept plugging around with all the activities what they were giving me, they were offering me, and I didn't realize it was almost a year. Then I was really enjoying my work, shifting from mechanical CAD to website testing, because it is the work what I was doing is the current technology what is running, and apart from that, it was also feeding my bread and butter. So I'm still in support for the mechanical, the nature of work what I have done, but it's just like filling the gap where I will be heading forward or moving forward here. So
Okay.
the most rewarding part of my job, I didn't come to the most rewarding aspect of my job. So after my experience in web application testing, I feel that I'm up to date with the current technology, what it's going on, what it's running. Like every industry would have, must and should have their website, their own website. So I think that's one of the yeah, the latest technology, the current technologies which I am enjoying my work. Yeah.
Okay, great. So if you've just joined us, we're talking to Sandesh, who's made the shift from mechanical engineer to test analyst. Excuse me. Please feel free to post questions in the question box, and I will ask them as they come up. You can also raise your hand by clicking on the yellow hand. Now, Kiran and Padmaja have their hands up, so I'm going to open the microphone to Padmaja. Now, so Padmaja, if you're listening, you can speak now. Do you have something to say, Padmaja? Hello?
Hi.
Hello, Padmaja. How are you going?
You hear me?
I can hear you. Do you have a question for Sandesh?
Yes. So you basically came from mechanical background and you started testing here. So did you do any course in that field, or how did you get onto that?
Yeah. Yeah. Good one. Good question. I always had a thought of doing some course, but since I had a family as well, I was finding a bit hard to do a course. But I joined Terry's course, and Terry was my coordinator. But other than that, I didn't do any specific course related to testing. That's the reason I took up with the work placement, which helped me a lot. It's one of the way to enter into the market to get local experience. So when I was applying for jobs, I was not at all getting any responses from any employers. But when I started applying for unpaid work placement, which the kit and all what Terry had sent me, and I noticed that there were some responses I was getting, so I just started. I just gave 2 or 3 interviews in testing, unpaid work placement, and got selected in the 3rd work placement interview. So that's the way I went into. But I'm still like trying to get some courses done, but still haven't managed to do some specific tools, learn some specific tools by joining some course, but I'm doing it by myself online in tutorials. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Did that answer your question, Padmaja?
Yeah, I think I have a question to you then.
Yeah.
7.
Yes, go ahead.
So you into the work placements, like, so are they based on testing environment or
The work
mechanical background?
No, the work placement for Sandesh was in a mechanical. Wasn't that correct, Sandesh?
No, what I did is like I tried to apply for mechanical design work placements, but I managed to yeah, I even did a work placement in mechanical field, but I didn't get an extension in that because there was some redundancy and all going on, and there was some cost cutting going on in some railway industry, and then I decided like I will shift myself into web application testing and made a separate CV for as a web testing analyst, as a test analyst, and then got into web application testing, which is completely into website testing.
So you actually did 2 work placements, is that correct?
Yeah, I did 2 work placements, but the one didn't get, the mechanical work placement didn't get extended, and it didn't get turned into a paid contract. But the one which I did in website got turned into a paid contract. Yeah.
Okay, so just to clarify there, the work placement is in whatever field you choose. Okay, so you nominate. Now, if you do have 2 options, as Sandesh did, there's no reason why you can't try one of each. The placement is flexible, and you can have multiple placements. That's fine. So, did that answer your question, Padmaja?
Thank you very much.
No problems. I'm going to close you off now and move on to another question that has been posted. This one's from Jagan. I am working as an EMC storage engineer in India, and I'm going to migrate to Sydney in a couple of months. Is it good to search the job in Sydney which I have experience in India for, or should I prefer other based on availability? So I guess what Jagan is saying here is that is it better to go with what you have done, or is it better to try something where there are lots of options perhaps?
I'm not sure what Jagan has done. Can you just repeat the profession what he's been working on? Terry?
Okay, so he's working in EMC storage engineer. This is his profession.
Okay.
So that's his profession. Whether there is a lot of work in Australia in this area, I'm not sure. He may think there's not. So he's thinking, should he be trying something with where there's a greater availability of work? Can I just say one thing before Sandesh replies? The easiest thing to do is to continue doing what you have done. Okay, that's a general rule. There are some situations where your job may not exist to the same extent. So, for example, an automotive engineer will have trouble finding work in Australia in an automotive factory because the automotive industry has completely died or will die by the end of the year. So this may force you into other fields, but generally it's better if you can stay in the area that you have been trained in and you have experience in. So Sandesh is a little bit of an exception to the rule. It's quite unusual what Sandesh has done, having this career change. So that's one of the reasons he was invited on this evening to talk about that, because it's not a typical story. So Sandesh?
Yeah, Terry, as you said, it's totally right what I agree, but there is a reason for this one. Like I easily justify with what you were just now saying, because there was a skill set, there was an experience what I had gained in India, but that was not at all. There were very less scope, I mean to say less opportunities in this country. So what I did was like I tried to bring something which is closest to what I was working in India. I was working something in testing, but it was in mechanical CAD software testing. So when I noticed that there's a lot of opportunities for testing and software development as well, I noticed that I could at least somehow manage to get into testing the actual website or the software testing. So that was one major change which helped me, but it had a lot of drawbacks or maybe a lot of pain, but that's definitely helping me to keep rolling as a paid job in Australia. So I would suggest, like, if I would suggest anybody coming from overseas to first do a little bit of market research on what they are currently working on, and to get some feedbacks from people who are already working here, to know the job market, to know the job market of their profession. And if there is nothing, if there is less scope, then I think matching with some profession which is with a profession which is more has a lot of opportunities in Australia, to closely match with the one which they are working in India. So that will definitely help them, help us here.
Yep, great, good answer. So just a couple of other questions coming through. Jayashri has asked, what were your preparations to get into this job? So we know that you did a work placement. How is the work pressure at your work? Is it a high pressure work environment?
The good thing about work placement is you are not being paid. So that's the one good thing. There will be pressure, but having said that, you have a mindset that you are not being paid, so you feel a little bit relaxed and try to learn more. And having in mind it's somewhere around 1 to 2 months. I did a 2 months work placement, which then got converted into a 3 months contract, paid contract, and then that again converted into a 6 months contract, and then just went extending. So so when you are in a work placement, I think it's a good part to learn as much as tools and as much as gather as much as information from that employers. And the another good part is you get to mingle and interact with the people overseas here, like the local, the residents over here, and you get to know the culture, what's in Australia, how they are, like how they communicate, and what they are mostly interested in. So they're pretty much relaxed, and they just like people. They want to interact with one another, and they want to know much more. It's a more relaxed kind of environment when it comes to interacting with people in the team. I think that's the one good part in getting a work placement, which can then push ourselves further.
Yeah, look, it gives you, like you said, there's less pressure. It gives you the opportunity of making mistakes where there is nothing writing on those mistakes, and just getting familiar with the Australian work culture. What about when you moved into paid employment? Have you found your workplace stressful?
No, not at all, because the way what I was working in an unpaid work placement, I still feel like I am in an unpaid work placement. The same, I kept the same pace, which didn't make any difference for me when I got into a paid contract.
So is that because you were with the same employer?
It might be one of the reasons, but I didn't find any difference when I jumped to a paid contract, because I was already doing the same project, and then the same project got extended, which I was familiar while I was in an unpaid work placement. So I didn't notice any difference. I just kept on working, testing and learning stuff, learning new things, and yeah.
Okay. Kiran has asked a question. Hi, Sandesh. How are you? As a fresher, should we learn any courses related to the role? So I'm assuming Kiran is thinking about testing as well. So did you do any formal courses, or was it more self-study?
Most of the tools what I learned was on-job training, like they were giving me some on-job training as well, and then I used to prepare myself away from work, which helped me a lot. There are some mentors who were constantly trying to help me out in my work, when I was working. But I would suggest, if anybody wants to get into testing, or take up some course like if it's automation, take up some tools like Selenium, learn some automation tools, Selenium. Or if it's what I have noticed in Australia, there are some rigid tools, test framework which they carry out. That's one is the accessibility testing, where people test whether the website is accessible for even people with disabilities. So that's one. If you have done any such particular kind of tools, or having some knowledge of that particular tools, even you can learn it online as well, then definitely that will help to get a job, or at least get an interview.
So we often see as a base level, now I know you don't have this, but the ISTQB foundation level, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that. It's very good to have ISTQB when it comes to getting interview from a bigger organization like banks or some standard organizations. But sometimes with small agencies or with companies who are not much particular with ISTQB, you can even then, if you have a local experience, you can overcome that ISTQB certification. But having ISTQB is always it's always a setback, or it's very good. Yeah,
it's a good foundation.
Yeah.
Just on the automation tools, is there anywhere online where you can satisfactorily learn about, say, Selenium or other tools?
That's the only problem with Selenium or automation tool. They don't much clearly describe everything. Till now, I have not found any tutorials which is much more elaborative than learning a programming. There are a lot of online tutorials to learn any of the languages. But having said this, I am much more comfortable with. There's one tool called Tools SQA, which has much of Selenium and other Cucumber and other continuous integration. The process of implementing these tools, and even the framework, how it can be done. There's one website that is Tools SQA, which can be helpful. But other than that, it's just taking up the project and start implementing the automation framework. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Another question from Arun. I was a mechanical engineer for 14 years in Sri Lanka, and I worked in maintenance field in the fast-moving consumer goods sector. I got an AutoCAD design engineer opportunity in Melbourne for 1 year contract. Now it ends up 6 months is gone, and it is very hard to get into this sector, as Sandesh has said, on his experience. Do you think the fast-moving consumer goods sector has good opportunities in Melbourne?
Yeah, this is a good question, which even impresses me, because before my engineering, I have a mechanical background. I have even done a course of tool and die making, which is related to fast-moving consumer goods, molds and press tools. I'm pretty sure that Australia has a good opportunity for fast-moving consumer goods designs and AutoCAD design and CAD design engineering. But the only thing why I made a shift was I was not much into the designing profession. I was somewhere doing the product testing, the CAD software testing, so I just opted it. But I'm definitely sure that Australia has an opportunity for fast-moving consumer goods and food processing industries. There are machineries used for all food processing industries, so it has an opportunity for FMCGs. Yeah.
Yeah, look, as far as general manufacturing is concerned, the 2 or 3 areas probably that are strong in Australia, a lot of manufacturing has gone offshore to China and other places where it's cheaper to manufacture. But food and pharmaceuticals are 2 very strong areas. Also packaging and some plastics production is still also very strong in Australia. So there's some food for thought there. Okay, let's move on to the next point. What about keeping up to date Sandesh, you're in a profession where you're constantly required to learn new things. How do you do this?
This is also one of the challenge which I am still facing, but the day-to-day work, what we do and what we discuss, like even apart from the work, when we are lunching or when we are taking a break, having coffee or anything with my colleagues, we always keep the environment itself makes us keep talking about the technologies, the latest technologies, what is being used, the frameworks, or if it's testing. I have my colleague, test lead as well, who keeps on telling me, oh, there's a event coming up with testing in Melbourne, in so and so place. So yeah, getting those updates and trying to attend the interview, trying to attend the conferences, or there are some meetups going on even with testers throughout the state. There's some events organized where people speak about the latest testing frameworks, what they are using in their own companies, and that's a good networking what can be developed. And what I have noticed in my experience keeps me up to date, not up to the mark, because when it comes to interacting with the developers and the project managers, it's obviously coming from a different background. It's always a learning curve.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, good. So the meetups you're talking about, these are physical meetups in public locations. They're not electronic, is that correct?
Yeah, there are physical meetups organized in some place, in some particular place, where there are some event organizers, the well-known testers who are based in Melbourne, and they give their own experiences about the latest tools. Like, for example, there is a tool APM which runs in mobile automation testing. It's a kind of Selenium, but it runs in mobile automation. So all these latest tools have been they come up in such meetups, and it's a really good exposure to keep ourselves up to date.
Great. We've just had a few more people join us. We're about a little bit over halfway through. So we're joined tonight by Sandesh, who's a test analyst. Unusually tonight, we're both in the same location. So normally the guest panelist is at home. This time we are both at the OBP Australia office. Sandesh is downstairs and I'm upstairs. So if you just look behind Sandesh's shoulder, you'll see a staircase. I'm up there. So let's move on. Let's move on from that one. Do you take any formal professional development as part of your job? Or is it more just ongoing learning on the job?
So as the work that's going on has a rigid time frame, and it's running through some iterations, and I have not taken up any professional development since when I started this unpaid course, which Terry was my coordinator, and apart from that, it's only the on-job training what I'm getting. I'm learning a lot. We can't make it out, but definitely when it comes to when I just see back past my 1 year experience, I definitely make sure I'm sure that I have learned a lot from my day-to-day activities, like attending the stand-ups, the sprint plannings, the retrospectives, and all such meetings, and even the bug hunts, the UAT testing, all those activities going on. So these all activities are really adding to my professional development, and yeah, that's the only.
Yep. Okay. Good. And where do you want to be in 5 years, Sandesh? What's your plan?
I definitely do not want to come here.
You what? Sorry?
I'm joking. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
so yeah. Yeah. I looking back from my past 1 year journey, I can I can make a forecast of my 5 years, seeing somewhere where I can feel myself comfortable in the work what I am doing now. I still see struggling myself to get up to date, but after 5 years, I feel that I will be comfortable much more with all the testing activities, the testing frameworks, doing a lot of good stuff with creating test frameworks or whatever it is, making the product very reliable, implementing new technologies in testing framework and learning new stuff. I think that's the 5-year journey where I would look forward. And if possible, I would also I still like to integrate my mechanical experience with the testing or the software activity what I am doing now.
Okay.
So definitely I look myself somewhere. Yeah.
Look, it's good if you can be in an environment where you are constantly learning new things. This, of course, means you'll grow professionally and you'll have more options as the years pass by as well. So that's great. Okay, moving on. So we often hear, how does your industry sit in the Australian economy? Is it growing, shrinking, changing? How? Just before you answer this one, we often hear that a lot of testing roles are going offshore. They've been outsourced back to India or other locations because of cost. What's your feeling about this, Sandesh?
Yeah. Coming to the question, I see that it is growing. The IT industry is growing in Australia. It's definite. What I experience. And coming to your question, Terry, is that a lot of testing activities have been outsourced to India. Yes, I agree with that, because there are a lot of big organizations like banks and all the major industries. They don't want to invest a lot, and they can get the work done in quite a less rate by outsourcing. But there are some smaller agencies, there are some very good companies based in Australia which want a local testers. They prefer local testers because they are not aware of the outsourcing or giving the testing activities to other countries. So because few months back I had this word with my manager. They try to outsource some of their activities, but since it's a small organization, they will be spending a lot, and it's very hard for them to track all these outsourcing activities. So they prefer someone working in-house with them. So I definitely see much of the organizations still preferring people, local people here.
Okay. So you're actually saying some smaller organisations, it may not be actually as cost effective as they may think, yeah?
This is also, yeah, I'm saying this one, but apart from that, even when coming back to the bigger organizations, they want some local experienced people, right, because of they have their own set of rules, I think so, yeah.
Yep, sure. Okay, let's move on. So what have we got? We've got about 15 minutes left, so please, if you want to post any questions, put them up. Jagan has asked another question. How is the software testing opportunity in Sydney? Manual or automation, which one is in high demand?
Yeah, definitely Sydney has a lot of opportunities, and even Melbourne has very good opportunities. I see Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane all are having equal opportunities in testing and development. But when it comes to automation, yes, there is definitely a lot of opportunities in automation, but the only thing is like employers get a little bit choosy when it comes to automation. They want someone who has already done that particular set of tools, who are already aware of that particular set of tools, and they don't want to compromise on their testing tools what they want. Like they basically want somebody to start hitting the ground from day one. So, yeah.
So this is where an unpaid work placement can be a benefit again. I know it's not the ideal situation. Paid work is better. But look, if you have good experience in manual testing and you get into an environment where you get to learn some automation tools, this can be ideal. Put it on your CV, and then all of a sudden you start to get interviews. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. More general question now. What do you wear at work? How formal is it?
Yeah, it's more of a business casuals. I always wear business casuals, and sometimes during Fridays we wear jeans. There's no work like there's no set of rules that we need to wear. But more of a business casuals what I prefer, and most of the colleagues wear business casuals.
Okay. Yeah. Good. What about for an interview? You've mentioned what you wear in the workplace. What would you wear for a job interview? Would you wear a suit, no suit, tie, or no tie?
Yeah, it's definitely suit because since my experience, it's definitely suit with a tie. I just want to reconfirm that with Terry as well because yeah, it is suit with tie, but yeah, just want to check with Terry because he was the one who constantly monitored me and coordinated with me when I was giving up interviews. So I gave 2 interviews like it was just business casuals. I didn't get selected, but that might not be a reason. But definitely, what I have heard through my colleagues working in my company. Everybody prefer wearing suit with a tie.
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair comment. A suit and tie is a fairly safe option. What I tend to do is advise depending on the situation, depending on the industry, and depending on the employer. So ties are becoming less and less fashionable. I was in Collins Street the other day, and I've noticed that a lot of people wear suits still, but the ties probably more for the older generation. Now, there's no harm in wearing one to an interview, and then once you get to work, you know, I would suspect that not many people wear ties in a lot of professions. That's general advice, so please don't go out there and say you don't need a tie, because in some situations you absolutely do. So let's keep it as a safe option, a suit and tie. Just be wary of the culture of the company as well. I did have a client who was actually an accountant who went off for a role in a design house, a design company, so graphic design, and it was a very young organisation. He went there in a dark suit and a tie, arrived, and everybody was in jeans and T-shirts. So that's an exception, but if you can find out more about the culture of the particular company, it can be helpful so you don't feel uncomfortable when you arrive. But I think Sandesh's suggestion is a good one. It's safer to be more formal than less. And let's have a look. Anything else to that, Sandesh? You okay with that response?
Yeah, I'm okay with this one.
Okay, let's move on. Arun. In this test analyst job profile, are you doing more in hardware activities or software activities?
It's completely software activities because it comes into complete website testing. When I joined, I was doing some plain websites like some university, Deakin University. I was working on a Deakin University project. That was a simple plain website projects which had all the static pages and all the student contact information pages. But moving forward, I worked on a government website that is Know Your Council. It had around 79 councils of Victoria. They submit their data, and we extrapolate this data and put in a content management tool and verify those. So it was a little more complex than what I was doing with the university project. But since then, our company Lado, they themselves plan to launch a product. We are working on a product called Brawly that basically is a social media archiving product. What it does is it collects all the social media posts or tweets, whatever you make through your account. It collects and retrieves in a data and gives you back the information. This is specifically focusing for the government organizations where they have the record management. They post all the news and everything through Facebook and Twitter, but they don't have any traceback or they don't have any whatever they are posted, they don't have a proper set of records to hand over during auditing. So this is some kind of thing where we are interacting with Facebook and Twitter. This makes me feel very much impressed that I always keep my Facebook login account open, keep testing, because the nature of work itself is something of that kind. So yeah.
Just a question about websites and what platforms. Do you have any experience working with WordPress websites?
No, I have not used WordPress. I have been using Quizmatrix as the CMS because a lot of the government organizations use Quizmatrix. But recent project we have moved to Drupal. Drupal is one of the famous CMS tool now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So just maybe not government sites, but a lot of smaller companies and organizations are now opting for these CMS options, Drupal and WordPress, and I see quite a few people wanting, assistance with those. So if anybody has skills in those areas, I mean, they are fairly simple for the users to use, but they have a bit of depth as well. So it's probably worth having a think about that as an option, not for large companies, but for smaller businesses. Okay. Another question from Jagan. Being a test analyst in Australia, what programming language do we need to be familiar with the tools? So what programming languages are most people working with, and what tools?
Yeah, if it's a larger organization, I intend to say it's better learning Java, because a lot of people use Java, or there are some organizations like banking sectors, they use .NET because their framework integrates very well with .NET. So most of the testers use Selenium with .NET, but other than that, some organizations use Java. But in our company, we use JavaScript. So it depends on the organization, but the major ones are the Java and the JavaScript. If you know Java or JavaScript, then it will easily help you out with the automation, doing the automation testing.
Sure. And Jay Ashri's just asked an extension of that one. Do you require any programming knowledge for performing your testing activity?
Yeah, I'm still learning JavaScript. I'm not much into Java because all the developers work on Node.js, that is a JavaScript framework. They develop in JavaScript language. So constantly I am using Java and JavaScript and learning JavaScript framework to run the Selenium WebDriver for automation testing. The automation testing what we are doing now is for the project what I just mentioned, that's the social media archiving project. So what happens is when a user connects the account, the Facebook or the Twitter accounts, we never have notification from the Facebook or Twitter. They stop sending notification, and their APIs keep changing, Facebook and Twitter. So we don't have any control of that. So in such case, automation is definitely required. I have still been mentored from my project managers and my developers. The good thing is people tend to help you if you are really willing to learn all the technologies. They are always tending to help you, and this one of the good part. Yeah.
Right. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left, so please get those questions in if you want to ask one before we finish up. So, how would you describe your culture in the workplace? So we're talking about management style here, what the employer expectations are, and what are your expectations from the employer. So if you could perhaps think about comparing this to work in India, what the difference is.
Yeah. So the management starting from the culture, it's a bit relaxed here compared to our country in India. The only problem what I notice is like myself, I tend to be more we are not more free, but my colleagues are very free. They are very um, they just mingle very easily with each other. Yeah, so there's one drawback what I faced when I joined. I was not interacting with everyone, but now I feel like I've been at least 20% or 30% started interacting with all of my colleagues, and they want a bit kind of humor. They want to create a humorous environment. So that's the one thing which I noticed in the culture. Apart from the work, apart from the regular work, they are not like eye watchers, like whether you're staying overnight and doing this stuff. So you just come in at your particular time and go at the exact company working hours, 5 o'clock or 5:30. They are not much watching you whether you're sitting late nights or anything. So it's more like interacting with them, constantly interacting, constantly trying to approach them. So sometimes when I don't have any questions or I just sit idle, like thinking about some questions, I just go to my manager and just speak about how was your weekend and what did you do. So these are the stuff which they very much like. Apart from their work, because even they want to have a very friendly environment apart from the work, and their expectation is they want us to just constantly be in the same page, like keep speaking with all the issues or speaking about the project, or they want somebody who is more interactive. Keeps interacting.
Yep.
And
my
expectation.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and my expectation from the employer is like what I'm happy with whatever my employer is providing me, because they are constantly mentoring me, they are helping me out, and that's the good part. Like I'm enjoying with the current employer. Yeah.
Jayashri has just asked an extension on that. Do they let you work from home?
Yeah, they have that option, and some of the developers, the project managers who are more experienced, they work from home. But since I have recently joined and it's 1 year, it's past 1 year, and I have kids and family, I prefer working from office. So, but definitely you can work from home.
So you actually need to get out of the house to do work, because it would be tough for having little ones around. Yeah. Okay, we might just finish up with one question. Did you have any prior automation knowledge before you started this job?
No, I didn't have any automation knowledge. That's the reason when my manager hired me for an unpaid work placement, he knew that I had no idea of the website testing, because the testing what I had done for the CAD software product is no longer matching with, was not at all matching with the website testing. So first of all, I was not doing the agile testing, agile team environment using the agile methods, the sprints. I was not aware of those, and with the automation as well, Selenium. But he told me that if you can learn this within 2 months, or if you can just prove that you can do create a framework where you can show that you are doing testing of trying to approach the automation part and trying to gather the requirements, then they told that it's fine for them. So
excellent.
Just gain through local.
Yep. Okay. Again, so the work placement proving very useful in that situation, correct?
Definitely. It definitely proves useful when you don't have that relevant experience, when you're taking a major break or shifting your career. I think that's one of the starting step which I suggest everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Great advice. And for those of you who are interested in doing a work placement, just drop me a line and we can discuss how that might occur. So this brings us to the end of this week's session. Just before we finish up, next week, same time, same place, Umesh is going to be joining us. He's a network engineer in the telecommunications environment. So you'll all receive an invitation to that session. If you know of anybody in the telco industry or a network engineer, please feel free to forward the email. And that'll be next Thursday night. So just before we go, thank you again very much, Sandesh, for giving up your valuable time and sharing your pearls of wisdom. It's been, I think, very useful, and people have had a chance to ask questions, and your responses have been great. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Terry. Thank you for giving me this opportunity as well. And thank you all for your conversation and coming into this webinar here. It was really, I enjoyed this webinar as well. Yeah.
Excellent. And thanks a lot, and goodbye to everybody else, and good evening. Yes, sorry, you have something else, Sandesh?
No, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So waving goodbye. Sleep well. I hope your house is warm because it's very cold outside in Melbourne. And that's good night for this evening. Bye-bye.